we don't talk about instructional pieces. We don't talk about fly tying. We don't really get into that sort of minutia. What we care about is experience. So in that sense, as an experiential magazine, I want to transport our readers to places that they know and places that they've never been before. And in those places they've never been before, I want writers and photographers skilled enough to place them there.
That was Steve Duda, editor of the FlyFish Journal, talking about the experience he has created for fly fishers interested in a different take on the whole thing. This is episode number 38 of the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today. We'll help you on your fly fishing journey with classic stories covering steelhead fishing, fly tying, and much more.
How's it going, everyone? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. Before I get into the intro, I want to remind you about a new live webinar we have going on YouTube. Head over to wetflyswing.com/webinar to sign up for the next live event where I have a new special guest each month to tie a few flies. In today's episode, I interview Steve Duda, editor of the FlyFish Journal. Steve talks about the experience you get with the FlyFish Journal, talks about the banjo in his punk folk band, and a story about swallows. We get into a little on conservation politics and about the women in fly fishing movement, which has come quite a ways in recent years. Don't miss this as Steve shares an end of the summer hoedown he calls the burning pram party that ends in, you guessed it, a burning pram in a bonfire you can see from outer space. So, without further ado, here's Steve Duda from the FlyFishJournal.com. How's it going, Steve?
It's going great, Dave. How are you?
Good to have you on. I've got a few questions here. You know, you've got a pretty interesting magazine that you are the editor of, the FlyFish Journal, and I'd like to dig into some questions there on, you know, what you have going and kind of your history. But maybe you can just start us off first with how you got into fly fishing and how this all came to be, where you're, you know, the editor of kind of one of the biggest fly fishing magazines out there.
You know, I just wrote a piece about sort of my anniversary of fly fishing. And it happened in the early 90s, like right around 1990, actually. I had just moved to Boise, Idaho, from Detroit, Michigan, and lived across the street from the Boise River. But right across the street as well was this weird little store that was like a combination hardware store, taxidermy, and pawn shop. And on the wall, they had a fly rod with a reel and a line for like $75. I only had 50 at the time, so I went in and kind of haggled and walked out.
Nice.
Walked out with the rod, and then proceeded to walk across the street and jump in with jeans and Converse high tops and start flailing away.
Huh.
Yeah, and it's been frustration and aggravation ever since, with little spurts of glory in between, I guess.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I love hearing the stories of beginnings, because I've had all types of people on here, and I just interviewed Rick Hafley recently, who's a big entomologist, and you know, he talked about his story where he's been doing it for a long time, and then I've talked to people that just started within the last year, you know, and they're right away they're guiding and they're just going, you know. And I think the common thing is like the passion. It just seems like it doesn't matter when you started, how long you started, but you kind of get that bug and it just takes you on. Is that kind of what it felt like for you?
I wonder, Dave, if there's like a triggering gene that some of us just have.
Yeah.
And as soon as, you know, holding a fly rod in our hand and that meets fresh water or salt water, that gene just triggers, and then, you know, we're done for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So how did that, do you remember your first fish and how that felt?
A total mistake. You know, I was just flailing, frothing away, beating up the water. And a fly happened to, also the one thing I do remember was I was using a Royal Coachman, which is a fly I probably haven't used since. But, you know, just happened to get a cast out there and it drifted down, and there happened to be a really, really dumb trout who was insistent on eating that Royal Coachman. It was probably like a size 6 too, just a monster fly.
Yep. Nice.
Yeah, but that was it. You know, just, you know, the Boise River flows right through town. there's trout in it. At least there was when I lived there. So every day after work, I would march out there and see what I could do.
Uh-huh.
Nice. I didn't believe in waders back then.
Uh-huh.
I thought if you were wearing waders, you were kind of soft.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to buy your first pair of waders?
I held out until the snows came.
Yeah. All right. Right.
Yeah. I better get some of those. Those look pretty cool right now.
That's right. That's sweet. And then, so now full circle, and you're up in Seattle now?
That's correct. The magazine is based in Bellingham, but I'm lucky enough to work out of Seattle.
Oh, okay. And what do you consider your home river now, and species and things like that you target?
My home river right now is a beach.
Oh yeah.
I live on this peninsula called West Seattle, which is surrounded by beaches, and we're lucky enough to see salmon swim by these beaches. So and sea run cuts. So I'm basically 10 minutes away from a number of different beaches down here, which makes it really nice just to hop up in the middle of the morning or the middle of the afternoon and go fish an incoming tide or
wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. So that's a unique type of fishing. I mean, can you explain what that's all about and how you catch fish out there?
Well, it really depends on what sort of fish is coming through. Now, if you're fishing just for the sea runs, which are residents here all year round, it's pretty simple. You can either look for the splashes and the rises on top, or just blind cast. When the salmon comes through, it's much more time and tide specific. It's not complicated. You just stand on the edge of the beach and cast as far as you possibly can. And you usually have something like a clouse around the end. So then it's just stripping it in, trying to get that fly to swim naturally or swim with a certain current. And then, when it's go time, just hold on.
Wow.
Because fish can be nice and big and fast, fun.
And where are these fish heading? I mean, they're heading up river eventually, right? I mean, how are you hitting them here in this trip?
Yeah, we're catching them right before they go into the rivers here.
Oh, so they're just kind of coming in and you're just getting them right at the beach.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. They're coming in from their migrations, and they're going into their natal streams. And if we're lucky enough, we'll intercept a couple.
Gotcha.
The biggest run for us is the pink salmon run.
Yeah.
Which is on odd numbered years. But that's also starting to leak over into even numbered years, more and more and more. Every year we have a nice little silver run too, and those fish are very hot off the beach. It's very fun activity. I would recommend. Wholesome, good family activity.
Yeah. This is really interesting. So, I mean, I think about, I've had a couple of guests on that talked about salmon fishing, and Jay Nicholas was on early on in, I think, episode 3, and he talked about fishing a little bit of salmon fishing in the Nestucca tidewater area. And he made the point that, if you're new to it, don't start doing that. Start steelhead fishing first because it's a little easier. But I mean, can anybody go up there and just go out there and throw off the beach and find some fish?
Is steelhead fishing is easier?
Well,
easier than what? Dave?
He's up there targeting chinook in the tidewater. So yeah, you got all the tides, and that was his point, is you got to figure out all the tides and this, that, and steelhead. You can it's not easy, obviously. Steelhead aren't easy, but you could at least kind of know when they might be there. And with the salmon and down there, you don't know. They might be there and they won't even touch your fly, so it's this kind of crazy fishery.
Right.
But is it different there? I mean, are these fish they're pretty hot on your fly?
Pinks will eat anything. Salmon, silvers can be really aggressive. I've hooked kings on the fly off the beach here in West Seattle, 10 minutes from my house, in view of the Space Needle.
Wow.
But it's pretty simple. I would recommend a clear intermediate running line, because those you can shoot those really well, and they travel far. And getting your cast out there is pretty important. However, you can catch fish with a 40-foot cast.
Huh.
So I've seen guys, struggle to make the 40-foot cast and still catch fish. Yeah. I'd also really recommend a stripping basket, which can just be a little rubber tub to hold your line in.
Yep.
especially if you're using an intermediate line, because those obviously
That's
sink.
right.
Yeah, but just get it out there as far as you can. Start stripping it in. Try different stripping approaches. Different flies. The pinks will eat pretty much anything pink. Otherwise, it's like a straight up clouser often.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few specialty flies that folks will use, but clouser will get you through pretty much.
Gotcha. That's man. That's something. Sounds like I gotta get up there eventually and try that out. That sounds like a lot of fun.
There's some guys here who actually will take their spay rods, so they can cover much more ground.
Sure.
And shoot their spay rods out there.
Huh.
And that seems to work well for them too.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, we got, maybe if we have time later on, we'll check into more about this. I did want to check into, the FlyFish Journal and just talk a little more about that, because I think you guys are leading the way in a lot of ways, doing things a little bit differently. And I mean, there's a lot of great magazines out there, and I've talked to, a few editors from other magazines, but maybe you could talk about, maybe you can describe the FlyFish Journal to somebody who's never read it before.
Oh, that's a good one. I like to think of us as sort of we're sort of a cultural journal as much as we are about fly fishing. I mean, we don't really talk about, instructional pieces. We don't talk about fly time. We don't really get into that sort of minutia. What we care about is experience. So in that sense, as an experiential magazine, I want to transport our readers to places that they know and places that they've never been before. And in those places they've never been before, I want writers and photographers skilled enough to place them there. I think our sport in many ways is about discovery. And I want the FlyFish Journal to be almost a discovery engine, a discovery machine. So readers can have an experience reading the magazine, not just read the magazine and forget about what they've read 5 minutes later. So I want to take us to new places, and I also want to take the readers to old places, and through the skill of our writers and photographers, get them to experience those old places in a new way. Mm-hmm. And not just to experience them, but also to maybe gain a new appreciation of those old places, those places that they've been.
Right.
So what we try to do with photography and with writing is to make the culture of our sport. We want to bring that to the forefront. So we revel in the writing, we revel in the photography, we revel in that experience. To us, that's more important than a 5-weight shootout or tying 5 under surface caddis patterns. We want to take the readers there. We want to put the readers in the water with us.
So you want to tell stories.
Absolutely. That's the coin of the realm for us.
Yep. Yeah. That's I mean, I think that's the my podcast, really, there is a lot of tips and stuff like that, but I know a big part of what I always think about is really trying to get into some stories, because people, I mean, they resonate with stories, and that's like a big part of probably anything, right? If you can describe something with a story, people will remember it, right? That's important for, I'm finding that myself. So it's pretty cool to realize, I mean, that's what you guys are all about, and you have some amazing photography. And how do you get, like, with the stories? I mean, I guess that's another question, but
I just want to jump in real quick, Dave. I mean, there's room for everything in fly fishing media. There's room for instructional stuff. There's room for teaching stuff. There's room for, river guides and stuff like that in the same space as there's room for a goofy magazine like FlyFish Journal publishing poetry or publishing fiction or publishing, a travel log. Right. So I mean, it's a big tent.
Yeah.
And if you do it well, I think whatever path you choose, you can make that happen.
Right.
Make compelling, interesting content.
Totally. Yeah. No, that's a good point. I was gonna try to see if you could take us back to, I know a little bit about your history, and you're a snowboarder, right?
No.
Mm-hmm. Ski. Or you have some other passion, right? What's your other major?
Well, Our other two magazines, Funny Feelings, who publishes the FlyFish Journal, we publish a snowboard magazine.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
My other passion, I think, is playing banjo in a punk rock band.
Oh, that's right. All right. I want to get to that one for sure. But before I do, can you just take us back to that when you became the editor of the FlyFish Journal and kind of what that felt like when you made it there, and how did you get there? Why the FlyFish Journal, and how did and then we can go into the punk rock band.
I started out just writing for fly fishing magazines. And as a writer, I convinced myself that it would be good for me not to read any other fly fishing writers, or really even look at fly fishing magazines for a while, because I didn't want to be influenced by anyone's style. I didn't want to know what was trending or any of that stuff. I wanted to be, my own writer. So I started contributing to magazines and had some luck with the Drake, with American Angler, and with the FlyFish Journal. And I would get copies of the FlyFish Journal in the mail, and I really loved it. And I really knew a bunch of the guys who had already contributed to it. So I started to contribute to them more and more and more. And by then, the FlyFish Journal was starting to get established. It was in its third year. Ben Romans, who was the editor at the time, decided to leave. So Jeff gave me a ring, went up there, went bass fishing with him. And after we were done bass fishing, he asked me to be the editor. I was absolutely thrilled because, FlyFish Journal had become my favorite magazine. And for any editor to edit their favorite magazine is a joy. It's a treat. Editing a magazine is a lot of hard work, but when you mix in that element of joy and passion and commitment, it makes that work really satisfying.
Yeah. Do you think the hardest part of being the editor?
Oh, that's a good question too. I think the hardest part about being the editor is learning how to say no, and then having to say no to like 100 people an issue. And that's how many people can't be in versus the 15 or 20 who can be in.
Yep.
So you have to get used to saying no and crushing people's dreams.
Right. And then for those people, what would be your advice to those people that received a no from you?
Keep writing.
Yeah.
Sure. Keep writing. FlyFish Journal is extremely competitive to get in. We have maybe 4 feature slots and then maybe 8 to 10 departments per issue. And in those feature slots, you're going against the best writers in the biz. So you're going against John Gierak. You're going against River Horse Nakadake, against David Zobe. I mean, you're going against guys who are pros at it. And even in the departments, you're going against some of the finest writers out there. So it's tough competition, right, to get in. So I would say keep writing, keep self-editing, keep rewriting, keep honing your craft. Because you're not going to get in to the FlyFish Journal or Tom or the Drake by accident, right? It's not going to be accident. So you have to work at it like you would work at anything else, like you would work at your cast, like you would work at fly tying. You have to really be dedicated and spend some time and hone that thing and cut every unnecessary word that you can.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like, like you said, like anything, you gotta, if you really want it, you can get it. You just gotta really go for it. And that's right. That's good advice. Right. So how do you, I guess the first thing is a couple of questions. How do you choose what to publish? And maybe you can give an example of an article or something you guys put out there that really resonated with people, your audience.
Well, the thing with the FlyFish Journal is it's a meritocracy. Right. So while I mentioned that you'll be competing against guys like River Horse or Gierak or, some of the best writers in the business, everything I get, I read. Right. So I don't really care if your name is River Horse or Gierak or, Jane Doe. I read everything that comes across my desk. And the only reason something gets in the FlyFish Journal is because I consider it excellent. right? So it's a meritocracy, and that's how I decide. Of course, now there are some other considerations. We want to be seasonal. We're a quarterly magazine, so we want some seasonality. So I want to publish stories that take place in the fall. I want winter stories for the winter issue, right? So there's that. And I also like a bit of geographical diversity. So I can't have everything take place in the Pacific Northwest. I can't have everything take place in Argentina. I have to spread that out a little bit as well. And I do like to get, Dave, new voices in as well.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's really, really important to our sport to have new voices and to have voices that maybe haven't been paid enough attention to in the past. People of color, women, other folks like that. I think it's very important to our sport to encourage those voices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that includes. I know I saw a little bit of your stuff on some of the. I think it might have been a video because you guys have kind of a Vimeo channel out there, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so I think it was something on. I think some women were going fly fishing, and they were, kind of. And you're seeing more of that, kind of this the kind of women's movement in fly fishing, and it's really awesome. I have a couple of little girls myself, so it really resonates with me seeing, whatever we can do to move that forward. What do you see as like challenges with fly fishing? I mean, it's always been this white male sport. Do you see changes there in fly fishing?
Absolutely. And it's about time as well. Ever since I've been editor of the FlyFish Journal for seven some years, it's been my experience that women have not been treated very well in the sport. They've been marginalized. They've been used as eye candy in advertisements. They've been used as eye candy in certain magazines. Yep. It's just distasteful. The past couple of years, finally, that tide is starting to change, I think. We're starting to see more women's voices, more non-objectified women in the media of fly fishing. And to me, that's crucial. To ignore half of our potential population in the sport is mind-boggling to me. Yeah. And I think that's finally starting to turn around. Thank God for it.
Yep. Yeah, that is crazy to think about that, but that's we're in a good time. And I think I don't know what the words of advice would be to people listening this to help move it forward, but I guess it would be to maybe connect with some of those people, which I have. I've got a couple of that's been one of my struggles with the podcast. I to date haven't had a single female on my podcast, but actually that's going to change next week when I have April Vokey coming on, and we got some other really great women that are going to chat. So yeah, I'm gonna do my part.
I know here in Seattle, a couple of the fly shops, the fly shop here in West Seattle has an extremely vigorous women's program. And I see that on social media all the time. The women's programs coming out of these fly shops, they've been very popular the last couple of years, and I'm not quite sure how it's going to be done, Dave, but they're going to change our sport.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for it.
That's cool.
And so hopefully by the time your daughters are ready to start swinging a stick, we could have an entirely different sport. And I think that would be absolutely fantastic.
I know. It's a crazy. Yeah. I don't get into politics really at all on this show because it's not, it's not worth the time. But I mean, it's such a maddening world out there with the political thing, and to think that, maybe we can have some influence on, maybe fly fishing. I don't know. Maybe that's not what it's about, but, for me, just thinking of giving everybody a chance, right? A shot to do what they love. And that's what I want to do for my girls as well. Maybe it will be fly fishing, maybe not, but just give them a shot at whatever. And, that's, I guess, something I think about.
Unfortunately now, Dave, I think that fly fishing is political.
Oh yeah.
I think you have to be, and I'm not sure being a conservationist is political.
Right.
But I think if you're a fly fisherman these days, you absolutely have to be a conservationist.
Yeah.
You have to care about the water, the rivers, the oceans. There's so many battles that we have to fight to keep the habitat productive and to keep the fish secure and make sure there's more of them. So, I mean, we publish a conservation piece in every issue of the FlyFish Journal. And it's tough because those stories tend to put people to sleep.
Yeah.
But we, it's very difficult to always find a story that's written in a compelling way, that tells a story, and that makes people care about the water and the fish.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, to be a fly fisherman in 2018, you have to be a conservationist.
Yep.
Or you're just a carpetbagger.
Right. No, and I think that's just, I guess maybe not everybody is there, but it just feels to me like, yeah, most people, they get that conservation ethic, and we probably have a little more work to do. But yeah, I mean, there's so many questions I have for you. One of the, I think I listened to this was on the Fly Tapes podcast, and it was the swallow story. And it was like, I'm not sure if you wrote about that as well, but maybe you can describe that a little bit, because I think that really is like, I don't know, the epitome of what you guys, maybe it's you, maybe it's what you guys do, but maybe you can talk about what that's all about and what that story is.
Well, the swallow story takes place on the Yakima River, which is Washington's single blue river trout stream. And I was fishing with my friend Langdon Cook, who's also a writer of note, and he hooked a swallow. And the story is basically it's a combination of the natural history of swallows and swallows in our imagination and in our literature, and that's interwoven with trying to get this swallow unhooked and back into the air. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed the piece writing it because swallows to me they're one of my favorite birds. And one of the things I love about fly fishing is the birds. You can just sit there and stare at them, and you see all kinds of different birds you never see sitting in the suburbs of Seattle. But swallows just happen to capture something in my heart, and I felt lucky to be able to write about them in a moving way. Then I got the opportunity to read the story aloud, and Jason recorded it, and it became kind of a favorite of folks who went to Writers on the Fly events.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it illustrates how we connect to nature via fly fishing. Like, fly fishing is the delivery vehicle for many things. Mm-hmm. We don't quite understand when we begin to do it. If it wasn't for fly fishing, I wouldn't be as committed to conservation as we were. If it wasn't for fly fishing, I would never have known that I love swallows so much. If it wasn't for fly fishing, I would never know the call of a red-winged blackbird without even seeing it. If it wasn't for fly fishing, I wouldn't know about these cool bugs that live on the bottom of the river. If it wasn't for fly fishing, I might never see the inside of a basalt river canyon. There's just so many things that attach us, or that we get attached to because of the sport.
Yep.
Right. And that's the wonder and magic of fly fishing.
Totally. Now that's, I think anybody, we've all been there and had those moments of the, the amazing fish days. I was telling a story. I was on another podcast, where I was telling us one of my great stories about a Babine steelhead I caught, and it was like one of the greatest fish moments of my life, and it was doing literally cartwheels on the water, upper teens fish. But this thing that I remember, obviously, but the trip that we went down to this canyon and we did this thing which just blew us all away. That was the memory. I mean, the fish that they'll always be there, but so I think I hear you, man. I mean, that's what everybody, if you haven't done it yet or haven't gone into, tried that new river, I think that's where you find new things. I mean, do you get out and try to test a lot of new rivers and things like that?
Well, one of the things that, you were just talking about going to the Babine and catching this great steelhead. One of the things that I always strive to do as editor of the FlyFish Journal is, and this sounds sort of counterintuitive, but it's what I do, is to not publish just fishing stories. Mm-hmm. We've all read them. Yeah. We all probably know how it ends. I don't really care about them. They're boring to me. What I care about is the camaraderie of the trip. The new people that you might meet, the new places that you might go, the new things you might see, the foods, the smells. I want you to take us there. I know what's going to happen when you catch that fish. And I really don't want you to be the hero of your own piece. I want to know how you overcame something, or I want to know what you learned, or I want to know how you beat back that failure,
cool.
how you dealt with that failure. Right? To me, that's important stuff.
That is awesome. Yeah, it's kind of triggering another person I interviewed recently. Tim Rollins, he's the line speed Jedi, out there. And he's basically documenting his journey of learning how to spay cast. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool because he called himself the line speed Jedi, and we just discovered what it's all about. And, the fact that he is, he's the, he is the Jedi learning from Yoda, right? I mean, that's the conversation we had that like he's documenting his journey, and we're kind of interested because it's his journey. And I mean, is that the same sort of thing where you guys, when people are publishing stuff, for the journal, that you're seeing that journey, or is that the, kind of what you're documenting, or are there other nuances there?
I mean, there are pieces that we've published where we witness people's journeys. I mean, that's a big part of fly fishing if you really think about it. In every fly fishing trip, unless you happen to live beside the river, there's a journey involved. Yep. And on most journeys, there's a transformation too. So, those are good stories, right? Those are cool stories.
That is. And I was hoping to get a good story from you about, I'm always interested, it might be fly fishing or just your life, but, to get where you are today, is there something, a story or a moment in your life that kind of influenced to get you to where you are?
Gosh, that's a good question, David. I think,
I just think because you're the editor of, like we're talking about here, a major, our industry, I mean, the fly fishing niche isn't humongous, but it's still, you're on top of the game here. And it just seems like lots of people would want to do something similar or whatever. And, was it just chance, or do you think, was there something that that influenced it?
I think, I was like about 16 years old when I had my first piece published. And that was the moment I realized that I think I only have one marketable skill. So I was consigned to a life of hitting typewriter keys.
So you've been a writer for a long time.
Yeah, I was pretty much the only thing. I mean, I've had a lot of odd jobs, obviously, but it's pretty much the only thing I've ever done as a writer and an editor. Which, like I said, I have no other skills. So thank God I found it.
Huh. That's amazing. So, I mean, and what have you written over the years other than fly fishing?
I've mostly worked for newspapers, alternative newspapers, and magazines. So, I've written for, your local alternative newspaper, editor of those. I started one in Boise called the Boise Weekly. I've written for Rolling Stone, Huffington Post. I was in music journalism for quite a while, for like 20 years. I was a music journalist. So I interviewed bands and did stories on bands and that sort of stuff. And realized, after a while that I could make like dozens of dollars writing about fly fishing. So.
Right. That's the amazing thing about fly fishing is I just this theme keeps coming up about, there's not a lot of money. And there are a lot of people that work a normal 9-to-5 job and do their fly fishing thing on the side, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yep.
So it's it's interesting. I love hearing the story. I mean, the punk band, or your band that you're maybe you can tell us a little bit about how that all came to be. And do you play out there and tour?
Yeah, we just got done with a tour, and now it's sort of festival season for us. So we've been playing some festivals.
Okay. And what's the name of the band, and where can they find
it? The name of the band is South Sound Tug and Barge. You can find us at South Sound Tug and Barge and on Facebook, stuff like that. We're a 3-piece, sort of a folk punk band, which means we have an acoustic guitar, an accordion, and a banjo.
Wow.
That doesn't really sound too punk rock, but we get it going a little bit.
Totally, the accordion. That's got to be something to hear.
Yeah, so that's been keeping me busy the last couple of years. We've had a lot of luck with the band, and it's fun. It's a fun thing to do, and that's it sort of comes back to the whole joy thing. Why do people fly fish? Well, it brings them joy,
Yep.
right? It's almost like mainlining it. It's the closest thing you can have to have full satisfaction in this life. You're standing in the middle of the river, and your heart is happy, and your mind is happy, and your body is happy, and it's all those things tied into a great package, right? That's what we love about fly fishing.
Yep.
For me, the same thing is like, getting ready to play a show or standing on stage playing a show. It's just very involving. All your senses are engaged and on fire.
Mm-hmm. You're pushing yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you're having fun. That's the great thing about finding something that you're passionate about is that you're having fun with it for sure, but keeping you on the edge and pushing yourself to learn new things is what keeps you going, right?
Right. And you know what else I think is a notion of satisfaction, a notion of a job well done, which is also one of the things we love about fly fishing.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of people talk about, oh, I caught that fish on mistake. Well, yeah, that happens sometimes, but most of the time we catch a fish because we know what we're doing and we make a good cast and we're good at it. We've chosen the right fly, right?
Mm-hmm.
It feels good to be good at something. And when we connect with a fish like that, we realize that we've done it, right?
Yeah.
We've danced with nature for a little bit. And we've been able to fool a fish. I know a lot of people who aren't fishermen might hear that statement and think, well, big deal. You fooled a fish, right? You didn't invent a cell phone or cure cancer or anything. Right. But at the same time, I think as humans, we need things to fill our hearts. And I think fly fishing really fills that bill.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So thinking back, and I'm not sure how old you are and all that stuff, but I occasionally love to ask the question about, if you look back at your 25-year-old self, do you have any words of advice you would give that person? I'm not sure where you were at 25, but
I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have listened to any advice at 25.
Well, yeah, right. I know me neither.
What advice would I have given myself? Jeez. Yeah, I can't. That's such a good question, Dave. You got me completely stumped.
I know. I have an answer. I don't typically answer my questions, but I'm just thinking about myself. And, it seems like for me, I kind of wasted a lot of time in my 20s. And maybe I didn't, but it just seems like I was fishing. I was fishing a lot and doing all that stuff. But it seems like now I'm more focused on putting something together that is really, like something I want to last. And maybe that's just because I'm older now and stuff. But I kind of wish for me I would have gotten started earlier on some of that. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. That's kind of one thing I think about. But
no, that's a good point, Dave. And I feel that way too in my writing and in my editing and in my approach to the work I do at the FlyFish Journal. Because when someone cracks open a copy of the journal in 25 or 50 years, I want them to think, yeah, this is what it was like back in 2018. This is how fly fishermen spoke, and this is what they were thinking about, and this is what they were fishing for. I want us to be sort of that time capsule in a way, that cultural time capsule. And for me as a writer and editor, this is vain, I know, but there is a notion of legacy. Mm-hmm. It's been such a great literary tradition in this sport. And to me, at this point in my career, it's important to be part of that legacy.
Yep.
Right? I just want to leave my mark on the sport and contribute to it in some way. And luckily for me, this sport has the finest literary tradition of any sport or outdoor activity in the world. So to be part of that is an honor for me.
Totally. And why is that? Why do you think that is? I mean, it seems that's quite a statement, right?
Well, I mean, we're a sport where you think about things a lot. You're just standing out there in your mind. Once your mind settles down a little bit, you can start thinking about things. And so we contemplate while we're out, why are we out there? What are we doing? and that leads to, I think that leads to a lot of the literature that we have in this, that we're lucky to have in this sport.
Yeah.
And you know what? People have been doing it for a long time, right? People have been fly fishing a heck of a lot longer than they've been, kiteboarding.
Sure.
So
snowboarding.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have it, and we're lucky to have it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I was thinking, you mentioned that, you guys don't do a lot of tips and things like that, but are there, thinking back at, you're being the editor and you've read a lot, are there any, maybe a couple of fly fishing tips that you maybe have used that you've learned along the way that have helped you?
My friend Jay Johnson told me one thing that always resonates in my head. He said, the difference between a good nympher and a great nympher? And I'm like, no, Jay, what? Like, one more piece of split shot.
Huh. Yeah. It's true though, right? That getting to the right level is a big part of it.
The other thing, like when I'm really blowing my casts, getting frustrated, and things aren't working, slow down. Slow everything down. That, like, to me, if I could give one piece of fly fishing advice that really encompasses all things, whether you're trying to untangle a knot or tie on a fly or your cast has gone to hell, slow down.
Yep. Yeah, that's a universal fly fishing, no matter what species you're on and whatever you're doing. You're right. That is a good one. What thinking about you've mentioned you've been writing a lot of different things. Do you have any a mentor or two throughout your history that really had a big influence on you?
In terms of like fly fishing writing, and it's odd that I edit him now, but John Gierach, I think, set the stage for a lot of the modern fly fishing literature that we have now. If it weren't for him, I don't know, we still might be reading hero stories, right? But yeah, definitely Gierach in terms of the fly fishing writing. Sparse Gray Hackle I thought was always brilliant. In terms of just regular literature, a poet like Mary Oliver, a writer like Jim Harrison, writers like Charles Bukowski, who used an economy of words to convey really, really powerful sentiment. Those were definitely the writers that had a lot of influence on me.
Yeah. And for Gierach, is there any example of any of his writings for those that maybe haven't read much of his that kind of resonated with you?
I don't know where I first picked up my copy of Trout Bum. It was probably a used bookstore, or it might have been a fly shop. But for some reason, those stories, maybe because they were the first ones, but those stories were the ones that really, really grabbed me. Now, this was 30 years ago that I probably picked up that book, and just 2 days ago, John sent me a story for our 10th anniversary.
Oh, nice.
Which is coming up, right?
That's sweet.
So I remember being a kid, or not a kid, but reading his stuff and being awestruck. And now to be able to work with a guy like John is amazing. And I'll tell you a little inside baseball about working with him. As I said before, I get a lot of stuff in, right?
Yeah.
And it's all in various states. Some of it the guys haven't used spell check, and it's just a mishmash, and
right.
The writing is poor, the writing is marginal, or there's bad parts, or there's spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes, or there's usually something that needs a little work. I've probably published 5 of John's pieces. Every single one of them has come in immaculate and ready for publication.
No kidding.
And as an editor, I haven't had to touch a single piece of his.
Wow.
He is the only writer that we've ever published that I can say that about.
That's pretty good.
I mean, that's amazing. And I'm a really hands-on editor too. I'm looking for something.
Yeah.
With they come in perfect.
Huh. Yeah.
I mean, he's that much of a pro. He's that good at what he does.
That's pretty cool. I've been, Yeah, hopeful that I'll be able to connect with him eventually as well. He's definitely, obviously, a big, one of the biggest names out there, and I'd love to hear some of his stories. And well, I guess some of his stories are out there. I mean, plenty of them, but but more directly, maybe dig into some stuff. But
he just gets paid for selling them.
Yeah, exactly. So, what do you think? I've talked about this before. Kind of the trajectory or wherever, kind of publishing and stuff like that. It seems like, obviously books and things like that aren't going away. We've talked about that before here, but what about the online stuff? I mean, you guys do some videos and things like that. And are there you don't really publish your magazine articles online. What's your focus for your online stuff?
We want, the video stuff we do, the microsite stuff we do, the social stuff we do, and the print too. We want all of those to be integrated. So when people think of the FlyFish Journal, they not only think of the magazine, but they think of the microsites we do. They think of our online presence. They think of our social presence. So we want to find a way to integrate the FlyFish Journal across all those platforms.
Yeah.
Right. So we want to get to a point where all platforms are equal.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. It's funny because I want to make a note here at wetflyswing.com/38. I'll have all the show notes. So we've talked about a lot of links and things. I'll provide as many links as I can to your band. Maybe I could find a YouTube video out there or something like that. I'm definitely going to check out that after we're done here. But, yeah, no, this has been good. I think, I was trying to come up with, I thought I saw something out there where you had some sort of and I might be completely wrong in this, but like an event where you guys meet up and have a campfire hoedown sort of event. Am I mistaken on that?
We have an event every second weekend in October, along the Yakima River called Burning Pram.
That's it. Yep.
And this has been like 15, 20 years now we've had this thing. And it's just pretty much a way for a huge group of fly fishers to get together and really have a great party in the middle of the desert. So, the fly fishing is usually fantastic that time of year because the trout are hungry and they're about to go to sleep and they want to pile on the calories.
Oh yeah.
But then we have a lot of other activities. So everyone brings food and there's huge potlucks every evening. People bring their homemade wine. People brew beer. Got a couple moonshiners in the crew, and then we have the all breed dog race, which is a fantastic spectacle. Like 30 dogs lined up.
Wow.
And then running 100 yards for a chance at glory.
No kidding.
We have a huge Rochambeau tournament for a custom fly rod.
Oh wow.
We do some singing, we do some people play music, and then we burn. Someone is always responsible for building a pram that we burn. So by the end of the night on Saturday, we have a bonfire that you could probably see from a satellite.
No kidding.
Yeah, it just really goes.
Sweet.
So and we'll get fly fishers from Idaho, Alaska, Montana. We'll even let people from Oregon in.
Yeah. Nice.
It's a great time.
That sounds awesome. Cool. Well, yeah, maybe I can make it out there. You said end of October?
Yep. Second weekend in October.
Perfect. Yeah, that's good. So yeah, I mean, I wanted to focus here a little bit on, I guess one question I like to ask everybody is just on flies. I mean, as far as we talked earlier about this fishery where you're hitting them off the beach, which I think is amazing. Now you mentioned a couple of flies. What are your top 2 or 3 flies that you kind of go with? Well,
it depends for what fish, right?
Yeah.
Are we talking about?
Yeah, let's say for those, for the sea run. For the sea run?
Well, let's talk about rainbows because there's not a whole huge variety really when you're sea run fishing. Okay. It's, there's a handful of other ones, but for trout, I love a Quigley cripple off the back of a caddis. Or I love a pheasant tail, like a 2 pheasant tail rig, like a beadhead pheasant tail, and then trail that off with an unweighted smaller pheasant tail off the back.
Yep.
That is deadly. I mean, they just clean. They just vacuum the river for me.
No
You
kidding.
can't catch anything, any trout, I think, on a pheasant tail.
Huh? And you have some lead on there as well?
So yeah, usually.
Yeah.
I've been getting into wet flies lately, and I know you talk a lot about steelhead fishing, but
Yep.
I own a tenkara rod.
Nice. Well, let me interrupt you there. Just say that I'm just in the transition of you're part of really season 2, which is more focused on trout fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have let me see if I can find it. So episode 39, actually the one right after you is a tenkara episode. So it's tenkara tanuki. So it's all he breaks down. I was really interested in tenkara, and actually Gearrock, I think, mentioned it too. He took a whole year off, and I think there's a lot of back and forth on tenkara, but my take on all this stuff is like, if you're having fun, it's great, right? I mean, like, just go for it. And I was just interested in tenkara, so it's cool that you mentioned that.
I've fished tenkara a number of times, and dudes might laugh at it or whatever. It can be deadly.
Mm-hmm.
The other cool thing about tenkara is that it's a gateway drug. Like if your kids have fly fished before, your girlfriend or your boyfriend has never fly fished before, get them a tenkara rod and watch them catch some fish.
Wow. And it's simple. I mean, that's the great thing about tenkara. It's like a couple of flies, and they're very sensitive tips. So I could see. I mean, that's why he explained the whole technique, and I was like, just listening, saying, "Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense." You can see why we could just slam them.
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's cool. I like tenkara.
Nice. So I lost my train of thought. I guess we were. Let me see if we got about. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we got about. We got a little bit of time here, maybe for a few more questions. Am I missing anything? Anything you want to talk about the journal, or have we covered kind of most of the stuff there?
How was your steelhead year this year?
That's actually not a great question. I was in the process. I got all sorts of excuses, but moving to a new city and new town, and I didn't get out a whole lot, so it was probably one of my worst. Well, I mean, we're coming up already to summer steelhead now, so I've been really focusing. That's been my focus the last few years. Mm-hmm. So I really don't get started until July, but the winter season was not good for me. I guess the runs have kind of been a little up and down, and they're a little bit down right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful that my biggest goal is with my kids to get them into it this year. That's my number one goal, is to just let them try. We've already out there throwing the spin rod, but I want them to just give it a shot, and hopefully, down the line, maybe they'll get into it.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this question. You are part of the fly fishing media.
Yeah.
You do podcasts. Right now, I think we're in sort of a revolutionary period for fly fishing. We've never had as much talent as we do now across so many different platforms, right? We've got people doing podcasts. I probably listen to 4 or 5 different fly fishing podcasts.
Yep.
We've got guys doing films that we wouldn't even think about 15 years ago, right? We've got dudes doing websites. We've got dudes doing microsites. We've got all this sort of fly fishing media happening now.
Yep.
As someone who's part of that, what's your take on it?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. I think my take on it is, I mean, part of the struggle is like we got to make sure that to get out fly fishing, right, and to stay connected. Right. So that's one struggle. But my take is that I think it's great. I mean, I think you see downturns in certain things. You see the good and bad, like maybe some books are kind of going away and all that stuff. We're not seeing as many. I talked to Gene, Gene Herring in one of the episodes. He was an old FlyFish TV, right? He was a guy back in the day who published a bunch of fly fishing DVDs. And and now he can barely sell those, right? Because it's all changed. But my take on it is, I guess I could just look at what I'm trying to do. Why am I doing a podcast? I'm doing a podcast because it's the one thing I found that I'm kind of good at.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's funny we're talking about writing, because I can tell you this. I've said this before on the show. I am not a good writer, and it's just one of those things where I always tried to, there's a number of reasons why, but I haven't written enough. That's one thing, but I just realized, nothing really that I wrote resonated with people. And it's just because I just wasn't that good at it, and I haven't put enough time in yet. But but the podcast thing was just, I know a little bit about it. I learned about it, and it felt like it resonated with people. I got like feedbacks and stuff, so for me, I think it's great. I think there's a lot more opportunities for people that probably would have never be out there doing it and expressing their points of view. And for me, like, my whole premise of my show is to, help tell some stories and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. I think it seems like a good thing to me, but I can see how you can get wrapped up and it can be a negative thing as well.
I don't know. I think these are the good old days.
Yeah. You think so?
Yeah. I mean, we have so many new voices and so many people doing new and cool stuff. I remember when I was first starting fly fishing, really the only media we had were magazines.
And books is
books, yeah, of course. But I would be so starved for content that I would like run down to my fly shop every day to see if the new American Angler was up on the stores yet, or see if the new Fly Fisherman was up in the stores yet. I mean, that's how starved we were for any sort of information. And now it's at our fingertips, right? And we've got people doing all sorts of cool things. Like the Writers on the Fly Tour is a great example. Or all these cool podcasts, great.
Yep.
Cool things, man.
No, I think some of the negative stuff I still see, and maybe it's more of a social media, but you made the point, just with the women and stuff. I mean, you definitely see some of those, pretty crappy Instagram things out there that they're just, that sort of womanizing sort of stuff, and I don't know who they are, but, there's some of that's still out there. And I guess that will always be there. But, I mean, I don't know. I think, it's a positive thing.
Positive, Dave. Let's be positive, man.
Yeah. All right. I'll change it back. I know. I'm kind of I don't know what I'm actually an optimist, but, no, I'm having fun, man. I can tell you this, the biggest thing is I'm having fun. I think like Jay Nicholas, I mentioned earlier, he's got a YouTube channel and he noted that he's not making a dime off of the channel, and I'm the same way, man. I mean, I'm not making any money off of this thing right now, at least. And,
any minute, Dave, it's going to start blowing in.
It's going to blow up. I know, but I'm just having fun. And I think that as long as you're, again, back to the fishing thing, as long as I don't care if it's a 10 car or whatever, but as long as you're having fun, it's a great thing. And the biggest thing, like you said, with conservation is that the more people we get into it, the more conservation minded people are going to be out there. And that means we're going to have a better world. So,
well, here's the other cool thing. Like the more people doing fly fishing media, the more potential outreach there is, right? Yeah. The more people might be able to be touched by the sport.
Yep.
The other cool thing about working in fly fishing media is, as you mentioned before, it's a small industry that we work in. It might seem big if you're just reading the magazines or whatnot, but it's really a small industry. But you can say this about fly fishing and the industry. There's some really great people that you meet, some just fantastic, creative, smart, compassionate people that you get to meet or work with or just fish with, which is fantastic enough, right?
Yep.
Just some great people work in our industry. And we have a big tent, so the more the better, I think.
Yep. No, I agree. Well, I've got a couple more for you here before we jump out, and I know you guys cover stuff all over the world. Is there a bucket list on your a place you want to go fish or hit up that you haven't been to yet?
Oh, great question. Yes, of course there is. I really want to go out to Christmas, of course, Seychelles.
Yeah.
I would love, I haven't been to, oh, shoot. I was just thinking of it. I spaced it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it'll come to you.
Oh, well, I'd love to get up there and fish some of those. I can't believe I haven't done it because I live so close, but some of those, storied BC steelhead waters.
Oh, yeah.
That, that's sort of like the voluntary beatdown thing. I don't know why to myself, but.
I know. Steelhead is, yeah. So Christmas is on top of the list?
Christmas for sure. We are running this feature in an issue that's just going to press now about Oman. Oman.
Okay.
Like where the heck is Oman? Yeah. Which is, it's on the Red Sea. It's on the Arabian Peninsula, untouched, huge GTs, and it just looks absolutely remarkable. It looks fantastic.
And nobody's heard of it.
Yeah. There's that's the thing with fly fishing, man. There's so many places you want to be.
I know.
so many places you want to go.
Yep. That's why it's cool. I think that's another reason I love it, that it's expanded, and that's going to be a good thing too.
Mm-hmm. And, no matter where you go to fly fish, there you are. And it's usually probably going to be pretty cool. Like, some of the things that you see, like whether I love going to the Bahamas, right? I love going to South Andros. And the reason I love it so much is it's so beautiful. The flats are so expansive and so remarkable and so vast and so alone. And it just blows your mind. And then you get back to town, and after you've been there for a while, after you've been there for 3 days, or it's your third or fourth year down, you begin to realize, gosh, you know what? I also love these people here too. They're so generous and so nice and so friendly to people coming in to fish, right? It's great. And that's why, that's sort of like the multifaceted, multi-layered thing about fly fishing that we've been talking about much this whole show, is that it's just layer after layer of delight and surprise, joy and discovery. Can't beat it, really, right?
Yep. Yeah, no, it's good for most people. I had just a couple more for you before we let you go, and thinking about, your magazine is obviously a good, I guess you could call it a resource. You got a lot of information there. Do you have another magazine or book or online resource you use when you're kind of planning a trip or going for it? Or do you have it all? Is it all in your pretty much when you're? I mean, what do you do for when you're planning a new trip? Well, what's your how do you set that up? How do you get it all lined up?
Well, oftentimes it'll be the lodge or a writer who'll come to us and say, "Hey, we want to do this. We have this idea planned.
Gotcha.
You guys want to take part, or do you want to send a writer, or do you want to send one of your photographers?" So in that sense, it's
not necessarily a DIY sort of thing.
Yeah, correct.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Yep.
But I still do DIY trips with my buddies who aren't in the industry, who just go out and fly fish. And I've lived in the Northwest for a long time, so I know I lived in Idaho, and I know a lot of the good zip codes out here.
Yeah.
It's one of those things you've got to put in your time, and good waters, or you keep your ears open and you hear about things, and then you have your network of friends, your friends who work at fly shops or whatever,
right?
Who certain areas, and they're like, yeah, I got a place for you. Go here or go there, blah blah blah. Yep. But in terms of like, do I have one particular resource? No, not really.
Yep, cool.
Not really.
Cool. So, well, maybe you can talk a little bit about, I think we've covered, a bunch of good stuff here. Maybe you could tell us the next, 6 months or so, what you have coming, anything new with the journal or your life, or anything we can expect from you?
Well, we have a bunch of, we're really been concentrating on the video stuff. Liam has been doing a great job for us. We have that. We've got some really cool things. I really can't talk about them till they hit, but we're really getting into some video stuff.
Yeah,
which is cool for us. Of course, my focus is mainly on finding the best writing I can about fly fishing. So that's cool. We have we're just going to press right now with our summer issue, so that should be going out very shortly. And then our next issue is our 10th anniversary issue. So that will be fun to put together. We're talking about some cool things to do for that.
All right.
And I'm stoked about that. And it's, in an era where people said you are crazy to start a magazine.
Huh. Is that what they said?
Oh yeah.
Huh.
I remember we got laughed out of meetings.
Wow.
You guys will never make it.
Yep.
This is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. And so now to hit that 10-year mark is satisfying for us.
Yep.
It's gratifying. So we're stoked about that. So yeah, keep an eye out for that stuff.
There's a saying, I'm not even sure where the quote comes from, but it's basically people come for the content, but stay for the voice. And I think it's something like that. But basically, you guys have your own unique perspective. And I think that's a good word of advice for anybody out there that wants to do something. It's like, there's room for it, right? You can, especially nowadays with social media and everything else, if you have something people want to read or listen to, you can do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have more opportunity now to get your voice out there than ever before. And if I would say one thing, it's be authentic.
Yeah.
Be authentic.
Be authentic. Be yourself. Cool. All right, Steve. Well, maybe you can let everybody know again where they can find you if they have questions or want to follow up with you.
Sure. You can hit me up at Steve Duda at theflyfishjournal.com. That's my email address for the magazine. The magazine is theflyfishjournal.com. We have a bunch of multimedia stuff up there, so that's also cool. And you can check us out at you can check out our band, South Sound Tug and Barge, at southsoundtugandbarge.com.
Sweet. All right. Well, like I said, I'll provide links to all that in the show notes here. And just want to thank you for coming on and sharing, all this information. It's been, this has been a little bit different than some of the episodes. And I can't remember how many people I've interviewed now that kind of been in the same realm as you, but it's a number of them. And you brought a different perspective on kind of the, writing and all of that. So I'm excited to share that with people and out in the audience, and looking forward to seeing more of your stuff.
Right on. Thanks, Dave. It was my pleasure.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
All right. See ya. So there you go. If you want to find all the show notes with all the links we covered, just go to wetflyswing.com/38. And just want to remind you, if you want to check out the new fly tying webinar series, head over to wetflyswing.com/webinar, and we can get you some updates there. Thanks again for stopping by to check out the show today. I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon, and hope to see you online or on the river.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com. And if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.